Hello, everyone. Why I'm out in the woods today talking, I thought I would talk about a subject that might be considered controversial depending on who's listening, and that is why I hate sports. And you'll see how this connects to writing later in the video. Now, I have always hated sports really all of my life. Now, that I'm not saying that if you like sports that you're a bad person or that you're stupid or anything like that. I'm going to talk about really three things in this video. First, why I just personally don't like sports, and that's a very subjective thing. And then I'm going to talk about my frustration with certain sports fans. And then finally, I'm going to talk about why I don't, why I think society has an unhealthy relationship with sports overall. So first is why I personally don't like sports is that I've never really been an athletic person. Now I would know, of course, I will say that the one exception is that I do have a mild interest in boxing. Um, the especially I especially like watching boxing from the '70s with Muhammad Ali fights of that nature. I'm not really interested in modern boxing because it's not in its golden age anymore, and plus it's on pay-per-view, so I can't really watch a lot of it anyway. And but that's the only sport I have some mild interest in because there's more drama and clash in that. Whereas whereas I'm not really into sports where people basically just throw or bounce a ball around. You know, that's what I don't like. But anyway, I've never really been into sports because also I like Olympic sports to a certain degree, like running, swimming, that kind of thing, and or even winters. But what I really don't like is like the main sports, the mainstream sports like football, basketball, baseball, especially basketball, because my state is really, and I'm from Kentucky, and Kentucky's really into basketball, and I've just never really liked it at all. Because people have just been so into it and crazy about it around here. Um, but anyway, the reason I was never really an athletic person though, and as a as a kid, for that reason, I was always picked last, you know, in gym class, and was ignored actually quite a lot to the point. Now, I'm sure I could have been more athletic or more coordinated if I had cared more, but I didn't, so I didn't try really to improve because I didn't care. But I'm sure the way I was treated also reinforced not caring as well. Like, again, I was always picked last. In fact, I was practically invisible. I remember one time we were playing this game, this battle ball. It was called battle ball, but it's actually not dodgeball. But anyway, that was actually one of the few sports that I was better at. But but I remember there was this one game where everyone was out, had been hit, on my team was out, had been hit with a ball except for me, but no one noticed, and they just stopped playing because I was invisible. And also there was this condescension in gym class very often where I wasn't very athletic, wasn't very good at sports, but the few times where I would, let's say, throw a ball or do something correctly, someone would say, "Good job, Joseph." They wouldn't say that to anyone else, just me. It was so condescending. There was this attitude that if you weren't really good at sports, then you must be stupid. And I just hated that experience. Um, and another thing is that my frustration with sports fans is that sports is probably one of the only interests in society, at least in America, where people will expect you to like it without knowing anything else about you. Like I've had interactions with people who didn't know me at all who came up and said, "So did you enjoy the game last night?" And I'm thinking, okay, why are you assuming that I watched the game or know what you're talking about? And and then when I tell them, well, I'm not really much of a sports fan, they'll look at me like I'm crazy. Like everyone is supposed to like sports, on some level. And it's just that attitude that everyone should like it. And also, there's this double standard where someone could be into like sci-fi or science fiction or fantasy or whatever and go to conventions, and people will say, well, that person's just a geek, that doesn't matter in reality, they'll say. But then someone could, paint red and green or blue and orange on their face and watch a sporting event and scream and yell at the television, and that's considered perfectly normal, even though that also really doesn't have an effect, on real life supposedly whatsoever. And so there's a double standard there as well. And also sports, in many ways, contributes to tribalism and this idea where at the most basic and rudimentary level, politics does this as well, but where it's like my team versus your team, and it can cause people to become angry, and it's just something that I'm not very interested in for that reason. And also, again, it's kind of boring for me to watch, and this because you're watching, like, for example, with basketball, you watch someone just dribble to one end of the basketball court to the other end of the basketball court, and it becomes really repetitive after a while, and I just don't find it very intellectually stimulating, and especially someone who's really interested in language and the power of language, which sports that isn't really about language, and so I'm not really interested in it for that reason. But also I think that society, and this is my main frustration with sports, is that society places sports on a pedestal above other things. People tend to value physical achievements far more so than intellectual achievements. So, for example, it's perfectly fine for people to celebrate physical achievements, but you don't see people, debating philosophy, on television, or giving, lectures about literature on television. You don't see that. And so I think that it's not sports itself, but when people place sports above everything else, that does demonstrate a type of anti-intellectualism when people place so much stock in that to the detriment of everything else. And that's another reason why I'm not. It's not, again. It's sports isn't the problem in and of itself. It's how people react to it and how people value it. And if you like, someone can have a healthy relationship watching sports while also interested in other things. But if someone is just values physical feats above intellectual feats, I consider that to be a problem, and I don't like the fact that we live in that kind of society. And so those are the main reasons why I don't like sports. I could probably think of more if I sat here and thought about it, but that's what comes to mind at this moment.